Okay, so the warm up, we're kind of just going to do it together. So we have negative and then the quantity x plus 3. So negative on the outside, this is kind of like what we just did in part 2, where we have this like negative here. So it's just like this end of the expression. And so this isn't just making the x negative, it's saying that everything inside is negative or the opposite of. So it actually means the opposite of x plus 3. And so the way we write this is -1 and then x plus 3. So we're actually taking everything that's inside those parentheses, the x plus 3, and we're multiplying it by a -1. And so that means that this -1 is going to be multiplied to the first term and to the second term. And so we actually have -1 times x, which is -1x, and then -1 times 3. So -1 times 3 is -3. So remember, we don't technically have to write that 1 there. We do have to write the x. So it's just negative x minus 3 is what that ends up turning out to be, which is why whenever we did in part 2, we said we changed this to a plus, and then we flipped the signs of everything inside. So we had negative x, and then we have positive 3, so minus 3. That's why we have the same answer. So what you were actually doing in part 2 of 3.2 was multiplying by a -1. You just didn't notice it yet. So now we're going to start the distributive property, which our learning will apply the distributive property to generate equivalent expressions. So let's review the characteristics of a simplified expression. So first, we need no parentheses. So our answer cannot have any parentheses. And 2, we can't have any like terms. So we can't have anything with the same variable. We can't have we can't have multiple constants. We have to have them all combined down. So we use the distributive property to simplify expressions. So in example 1, you can see that we have a 3 on the outside of the parentheses, and this is 3 times 2x plus 5. So the 3 is multiplying itself times whatever this turns out to be, except we don't know what x equals, so we can't do anything inside of the parentheses. So what we have to do is multiply this 3 through the parentheses. So we're going to multiply it to everything on the inside. The way that I think about it is like if I was going to go and get some ice cream with my brother. So when we go to get ice cream, they're going to hand me an ice cream cone, and they're going to hand my brother an ice cream cone. We're siblings, we don't share. So my answer will be me, this is a really great drawing, with my ice cream, and my brother with his ice cream. That's what we're doing with that 3. We are taking that 3 and giving it to both things inside the parentheses. So 3 times 2x, we can multiply with a variable. We just can't add things together that don't have a variable. So 3 times 2 is 6, and we keep our x. And then 3 times 5 is 15, so we have plus 15. This is my answer. So like I said, we can multiply a number to a number with a variable, but we cannot add or subtract a number from a variable. It's kind of some fancy rules we've got going on. All right, let's do well, this is a letter, so let's do letter B, example B. So we have a 5, and this 5 is going to be multiplied times that -1x. So this is a -1. So 5 times negative 1 is negative 5x. And then we're going to multiply the 5 to the 3y. So 5 times 3 is 15, and it's positive, so I keep that addition sign. And then I keep my y. And this is my answer. One last example. Now we're going to multiply with a fraction and a negative. So we have negative 1/3 times the quantity 3n minus 6. So when I write this, I'm going to write this kind of like how I did that ice cream cone. So I'm going to multiply negative 1/3 times 3n. And then I'm going to multiply my negative 6 times my negative 1/3. So we multiply straight across. This is what we learned back in chapter 2. So I'm actually going to put this over a 1. That's a 1. And this is a 1. And now we can multiply straight across. So 1 times 3, or 1 times, negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. And then we have 3 times 1, which is 3. And we keep my n. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. So we have a negative 6 times negative 1. So negative 6 times negative 1 is a positive 6. And then 1 times 3 is 3. And I'm going to move this up here for my answer. So that is not actually simplified because those fractions can be simplified even further. So negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1n plus 6 divided by 3 is 2. And I'm actually going to rewrite this one more time as negative n plus 2. If I'm correct, and at least it used to be, Big Ideas used to allow you to write in a negative 1. So I think that this will actually be counted on Big Ideas, unless they've changed it recently. I know there were a bunch of updates, but either one of these are technically correct. So you could have the top one or the bottom one as your answer. Now you are going to do the try-its on your own, and then you'll check your answer with mine.